Good morning, friends and family out in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube land. For those of
All
you
the
I
land.
haven't, great. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder and CEO of the Parent Twin Connection, and I am super excited to be coming to you on the first interview on the third day of the second week of our inaugural roundtable. And I'm super excited to have Leslie Josel with us. She is the founder of Order Out of Chaos, and she's a regular contributor to Attitude Magazine. If those of you who live in the ADD, ADHD world, I'm sure you know the magazine, and you likely know Leslie's name. Thank you for being with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And please, let's not make that a math problem.
I know, right? I'm thrilled to have such a diversity of professionals who have joined us. And by the way, for anyone who's watching, if you are in our Facebook group, you can pop in. We're broadcasting live in there as well, and you can ask questions live. So if you see me looking over, I'm just looking at my other monitor for any of that comes through. So Leslie, you are a master mind reader when it comes to supporting adults and kids, but largely kids, right? Who navigate ADHD. You want to give us a short background of how you landed here and how you got all this knowledge?
Yes. So it's a little nutty because it's been 19 years. And I say that because I think everyone out there, some people probably weren't even born in 2004. But I think we all have to go back to 2004 and realize back then, first of all, the internet was not a thing. It really wasn't. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't a thing in the way it is now. So
for sure,
information at our fingertips and podcasts and telesummits and Facebook lives and all of this digital footprint of being able to was not there.
Right.
I always say we really all lived very much alone. Mm-hmm. So I right off the bat, I want to say, because I am not only an academic life coach for students, I'm also a parenting coach. So right off the bat, I do want to say that anything I say about my own son, I've had his permission. And I think that is actually important as a parenting coach to put out there, because he's not 8, he's 24. But I am allowed to say, you'll see it on our site, that he was diagnosed with ADHD and executive dysfunction when he was 5. Mm-hmm. And going on that theme of where do I go? What do I do? What is this? A lot of what I did, I relied on my gut. And interestingly, back then, the things I did would probably have been considered revolutionary. Not so much now, like how I untangled his world at home and at school, and on some very basic ADHD principles for him, like what he didn't see didn't exist. So in my house, there were no closet doors, there were no dressers, there were bins on the floor that were clear. So now we all do that, but back then, 19 years ago, it was a little revolutionary. And I'm not going to bore your listeners with all of those things. But what happened, and I was working, I had a job, the whole 9 yards, but it stuck, and I was onto something. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine saw what I did and said, you have to come to my house. I have 2 kids, and literally within 2 weeks, I had 4 phone calls from friends of friends of friends going, I saw what you did at Lisa's. Can you come and work with my family? We have ADHD children with ADHD. And I remember turning to my husband, who has ADHD, and there is a reason I'm going to say that. And I said, but I'm such a Virgo, such a linear thinker. Right? I'm like, but I don't do this for a living. And he just sits back with his coffee and goes, you do now. I'm like, that's it, right? And I'm like, but what do I call myself? And he's like, Order Out of Chaos. I'm like, but that's so that brain, to go, I see books, I see, this was 19 years ago. So we're going to fast track. And about 4 years after that, I realized that this had to be a virtual company. That information that I was sharing and information that I was putting out there, people wanted. So absolutely. I was a little ahead of my time in that I was doing teleconference, people could call in to get information, and then webinars. And so 19 years later, we are a global, virtual, incredibly robust company where people come to us for products, programs, workshops, webinars, and coaching, both student and parent. Mm-hmm. Our flagship product, some of you might know it, is the Academic Planner, a tool for time management. We are in celebrating our 10th plannerversary, and we sell our planners all over the world. They teach students time management. And I write books, I speak all over, and I'm also the Dear ADHD Family Coach columnist for Attitude Magazine. And we also, and this is good for you, we give our sweet spot are our webinars. We are not a membership site. There's no firewalls, nothing like that. You pick and choose what it is from us you want. But we do give monthly webinars for our community.
Awesome.
Myriad of topics.
And ever since I met you, and I've been following you on Instagram, like procrastination is like your jam. And so when I was like,
is my jam, yes.
When I reached out to you, I know you'd offered that you'd be on the podcast or participate in some fashion. And when I thought, hey, I'd like to do this roundtable, and I reached out to you and you said yes, number one, I was thrilled. And number two, when I saw the topic that you wanted to talk about, I was like, wow, why am I not surprised? Procrastination. So the bet that you wanted to take today, that the title, if you will, that you offered me was how to do it now because it's not going away, why students procrastinate and what to do about it. And I imagine that there's an aspect of this that applies to ourselves as adults and our partners. Mine also has ADHD.
It does. But and I have to have true disclosure here so that I'm not here to, I'm here as a guest to impart information, but your listeners and viewers need to know I've been in the field for 19 years.
Yeah.
And I did set out 2 years ago to write my third book, and it was on procrastination, and it was written, even though parents read it, it's written to the student. I always say it's written by students for students, because what was really important to me, and I fought this with my publisher, was I didn't want it to just be me. So what we came across, and there's a reason I'm telling you this, is that we went back, my team and I, to try to find almost everyone I had coached over the last 19 years, families, friends, you name it. And we submitted almost like a 20 questionnaire saying, obviously I know some of the answers, but we wanted to get answers, some fun questions like, what's your favorite snack to eat when you study, or what's the best grade you ever got for the work you never did, right? Like because trust me, that is what obviously is going on. But then we wanted the real answers, what have you learned now? Because remember, a lot of these kids are now 25 and some of them are even 30. What did you learn? What was your reasoning? And so there's a lot of research out there on why adults procrastinate. There is a ton. And what we know about adult procrastination, that it's really not a time management issue. We all keep thinking of it as time, and and time actually, in my world, I believe time is very concrete. You can see time. Time has a beginning, middle, and end. But what it really is for adults, they say, is mood. It's all about your mood. Are you in the mood? And that we feel as adults that we need to fill up on things that are good, right? Think about it. I want you to think about your own life. And I'm a culprit of this, and I'm really not a procrastinator. But when I have to sit down and do something I really don't want to do, whether it's, I'm going to say it, sometimes it's writing, because writing is hard to just write, or I have to make a phone call to a parent I don't want to make. Let me just check my Instagram for 5 minutes, because that's going to make me feel good, to then be able to turn around and do the thing.
Sure.
So it's I want, right? It's that fork in the road, and you're going to go to you have to remember, I speak to parents and students all day, so my language is a little fun, but it's okay, we're going to the happy, pretty place before we're going to the dark and twisty. But I'm sorry, that's how
it's true.
Okay. But what happens is we tend to spend a little too much time in that happy, pretty place. And instead of feeling really good about ourselves and good about our situation to then be able to turn, we actually feel really, I'm trying to keep it clean, we feel really crappy about ourselves, because one episode of Abbott Elementary turned into 10, right? The next thing we know, we've watched the entire season, and now we're like, oh, I lost 3 hours. And now add on the wrath of a parent or a teacher. And now you really have so is that why students procrastinate? Not 100%. It's very interesting. So that's a lot what we know about adult procrastination.
Okay.
What we hear a lot from students is now, I'm not saying mood isn't there. Mood is obviously there. But what the themes that came out of all of this was choice and control. Choice and control. I could say it over and over and over again. being able to do what they needed to do in a manner that spoke to them. So imagine if you have ADHD and executive dysfunction, and you're being told constantly, you need to do it this way, when, how, right, in this manner, and it does not work for you. I fight that all the time. I mean, my joke in my house is that I'm a paper planner girl. My husband is an electronic, and I will never change. As much as my husband begs, can we please have a shared electronic calendar? It will never happen in this lifetime. But I'm an adult and can say that, whereas a student is really asked to do things and perform in ways that don't work for them, you know.
Right.
The other reason is that skill. And that's, I know it sounds very pedestrian to say, well, okay, that makes sense, but I don't think we necessarily all the time remember that. That there are a lot of times we are asking students to do things that they really just don't know how to do.
Sure.
Now, if you have a student who's executive functioning, and I know this is not an EF Facebook Live, but if you have a child with weak EF skills, you have to remember, and I am going to tell you this because I think this is critical, that any student, right, that has any kind of executive functioning deficiency will be approximately, nothing is ever an absolute, will be about 30% less their chronological age for that challenge. What do I mean by that?
Interesting. Okay.
So if you have a student at home, listen up, friends. If you have a student at home, we call them students, we don't call them kids.
Yeah.
You have a student at home who is weak or challenged with organizing, time management, prioritizing, planning, focus, effort, working memory. That's remembering to remember. That's not what I ate for breakfast. Impulsivity, even mood regulation. And let's say your child is 13. They might be 13 athletically. They might be 13 socially. They might even be 13 academically. But if they're time blind, they're going to be 9. If they have weak working memory, they're going to be 9. And what you would expect from a 9-year-old is very different than a 13-year-old. So you have to remember, when sometimes we assume that a 13-year-old should be able to get his homework done on his own, and all this is procrastination related, right? What do you mean you're still in bed? What do you mean you're still eating breakfast? You have to, right? Why is he procrastinating? He's not, remember, he's 9, he's not 13. If he can't, if he doesn't know how to do something, we have to remember that we need to actually teach what it is we need them to do. And I have to tell you, that one, which seems so simple, was the theme for every one of these kids, was no one's ever taught me. Everyone just assumes. The best one I ever heard was, telling me is not teaching me.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I've told you 3 times to empty the dishwasher and you still haven't done it yet. Why haven't you emptied the stinking flippin' bleepity bleepity bloppity dishwasher?
Because telling me is not teaching me.
So then what I hear in my head, because I have a few friends who do have students with ADHD. I like that distinction, by the way. But I've shown them how to do it 5 times.
I'm sorry, say that again. I apologize.
Yeah, no, if they're just saying like, oh, but I've shown them how to do it 5 times. I've taught them. What do you mean I haven't taught them? So like, where's that balance? Is that
okay? So when you teach someone something, and listen, I'm the first one to call myself out. I need to say this. Like, I'm a parent. Now, granted, my kids are flown and grown, but trust me, like my youngest is 24, and I'm still going. Okay, and I'm still looking at sometimes going, okay, I just told you to do something, and there's no way, like, I'll give you the example. He's moving from one apartment to another. That is an executive functioning nightmare for someone who has ADHD, right? All the little details about, and I'm sitting and I catch myself going, well, I've told him that 5 times. I'm like, okay, Leslie, like, how embarrassed are you that you're not taking your own advice? So it's not just telling or even teaching. It's not showing. I give a webinar, and I'm not here to even sell you that, on how I take parents through teaching a habit, right? So it's modeling behavior. It's observing behavior, them doing it. It's not moving to the next step until we know that they have it down. It's supporting them at what I call point of performance. Mm-hmm. So the best thing I hear all the time in our parenting world, meaning the Order Out of Chaos community, is, people laugh and they're like, I don't know how many times I've shown my kid how to do laundry. I'm all about laundry because laundry doesn't affect you. So to me, every kid by the time they're age 15 should really be doing their own laundry. That's just me. It's a really good skill for them to do because it doesn't affect anybody else in the house, right? The garbage, the dishwasher, the dog affects you, right? Laundry's over here. But how are you supporting that student? Are you supporting them with a chart, not a chart, like instructions? Are you supporting them with pictures of them actually doing it? Like, I literally have parents who have laminated pictures of, this is the dial for hot. This is what whites look like. And I'm not saying you're going to be there forever, but we're talking about solidifying information in the brain. We're talking about working memory. We're talking about how to remember to remember. And if we're not supporting our students at point of performance, where they live in essence, even showing them 5 times, it's not going to get here. It's got a super glue in there. Now, how do we super glue information? By making it multimodal, by them doing it, not us doing it, not us showing, right? Your student has now, that doesn't mean doesn't mean you just go away. And I know we're doing something, I want to kind of get back to the bigger picture here, but it's more of, let me see how you do it. Right? I'll stand here. Why don't I watch you and you tell me what you might be tripped up with?
Right. And in more traditional educational spaces, we've heard it as, meet them where they're at, or, differentiated education. Like one kid may learn to do it one way, another kid may learn it to do another way. So meet them where they're at, wherever they're able to perform, meet them there and walk with them.
But one of my favorite things to do with students, and again, and teachers do this really well. And I've taken it and I use it outside of the academic space. So when a teacher is introducing new material, okay, and it's interesting, we're not even talking about procrastination anymore. We're really talking about solidifying information. But yet they all go hand in hand, because sometimes a parent goes like, he's procrastinating. I've asked him to do something 5 times. But what a teacher will do all the time is they will, when they are introducing new information, they will not just introduce the new information. They will say to their class, what does this look like to you? Where have you seen this before? What is similar to this? Noticing I'm asking questions. People always ask me, how do I strengthen the brain? You strengthen the brain by asking your kids questions, right? So I know I'm doing a sidebar here, but I'm sure all of us out there are really good at going, do you have your keys? Do you have your wallet? Do you have your cell phone? Do you have your book bag? Do you have your sneakers? Do you have your clarinet? Do you have your lunch? Should I keep going? I know what the better question is. What do you need? There's a million one. What do you need for school today? What do you need to get out the door? Have you looked at the list of things you need? It's asking them the questions so the brain strengthens.
Right.
Getting back to the teacher, that's what they do, because the brain, I want people to think of a tethering, like a tether pole with Velcro all over it. If something new is in there, it's got to find its super glue. Oh, this is all about Mesopotamia. No, I don't. This reminds me of the Roman Empire. Stick. Got to find its way. So when if you even want to ask your child to do something, sometimes what I'll say, it's the same amount of time as if it's a podcast they like, a TV show, how it's the same amount of time as it takes you to get to school. I find something that student knows really, 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 really well. Right?
Right.
It's the same amount of time as your lunch period. Trust me, they know exactly how much time their lunch period
is.
Right? But that really helps.
Right. And it's in neurolinguistic programming, they call that anchoring, tying it to something that you're familiar with so that you can make an association. Or, in education, it's associative learning. It's a foundational learning skill. So, all right. So to help us go back, you said for adults, a lot of procrastination is mood-based, and that's a piece, but you said for students, it's first about choice and control, and then about skill. Is there anything else that contributes to student procrastination?
There's a million things. I mean, we could sit here all day, and I wrote a book about it. I mean, there's all different things that lead to. There's also, this is a whole other story, but there's perfectionism. There's all the mood-based. I don't want to really go there, but there's a whole mood-based panel, you might say, of reasons why your student doesn't go. But one of the things I do want to mention is, because we talk a lot about this at OOC, and we call it the TOO student. Okay, the two student. Mm-hmm. Everything is too much, too big, too hard, too vague, too long, too loud, too much. They are overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. They are just overwhelmed. And there's a perception to overwhelm. And this is something I fight a lot, not fight in a bad way, but I'm like the champion here, that there's a perception that overwhelm looks like lazy. Mm-hmm. We always say that lazy is a perception. I don't believe in lazy. The same way procrastination doesn't live on its own. There is always something going on underneath the surface. If your child is procrastinating, they are procrastinating for a reason. Okay. Whether it's an emotional one, maybe there's that panel of anxiety or perfectionism, other things there. Maybe it's skill-based, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they don't understand, maybe there's a million reasons. It's the same thing with overwhelm. It's the same thing. Lazy there's no such thing in my world as lazy. Mm-hmm. There's always a reason behind the laziness. And so for me, when a parent comes to me and says my kid is lazy, so when a kid comes to me and says my parent or my teacher thinks I'm lazy, mm-hmm. I always say, you go back and you tell them you just have a hard time sustaining effort. It's a funny response because, again, that's my job, but it's actually a little true that it's not lazy as lazy. Maybe that student can't sustain that effort. Maybe that student's brain is overwhelmed mm-hmm. with so much sensory coming at them at the same mm-hmm. time. Mm-hmm. Maybe that child is sitting at home and you're doing a 2-on-1, and I'm not here to disparage parents, but I see it all the time that we do a 2-on-1. Do you know what I mean by a 2-on-1?
Like both parents and the kid? Yep. Kids outnumbered. So I'm sorry, students outnumbered.
And this is the student, this is your kid, right? They're just like, I'm out, I'm done. Like we call it the hoodie and earphone syndrome. Like they have just like put a fork in you, you are done. And I'm even going to go out because I think people are realizing I'm pretty much a straight shooter. Uh-huh. What also ends up happening is now you and your partner might go, well, why did you say that? Well, why didn't you say that? Well, I wouldn't have said it that way. And now there's a discussion going here, and your kids left the building. Oh, come on. Every single one of your viewers and listeners should be raising their hand going, that is my house. Yep. Because that was my house. Mm-hmm. So there's a million reasons why your kid is overwhelmed. I want you all to think of it this way too. Your student leaves the house hopefully with an empty bucket, right? And now they go to school. Mm-hmm. And I would sit in these IEP meetings and 504 meetings for my own kid before I became a parent coach. And I'd look around the room and I'd say, I want every single one of you to hold in your stomach. Hold it in. How we like suck in your stomach. Now hold that for 8 hours. That's my kid. Wow. Think about it. For every ounce of energy that a kid that is not neurodiverse puts out, my kid or a kid that is neurodiverse puts out 20 times more.
It's exhausting.
So that bucket is just filling up, and they're trying to hold it in at school. But the minute school is over, the dog annoyed them, you annoyed them, the sister's a pain in the you-know-what, the snack was wrong, the house is too hot, the car is too cold. Should I keep going? I don't want to. That's overwhelm. and they just can't get out from under that. So no, they're not going to start homework. They're not going to do what you need them to do. It's not procrastination. It is overwhelm. They have been taking in information all day long. And I'm sure there are people out there who say, my kid gets in the car and they can't even speak to me because they can't. So I want us all out there to realize that what you might be thinking looks like procrastination. And I'm going to venture a guess that it's overwhelm. And it's worse than it's ever been because there's just, they get it from every angle, every single angle.
Well, and I think we also can't underestimate or overestimate the impact that the last few years have had. You know, where for many of us, I'm going to say the vast majority of us here on the North American continent, life is back to normal-ish after the pandemic. But our normal now is not what our normal was. And we're all operating under, you know, crisis fatigue, if you will, because we lived in crisis mode for so long. And a fair number of us are still there. And for folks who do deal with neurodiversity, it's just that much more overwhelming because they function differently in the way that folks who are, you know, neurotypical manage things may not work, even as adults.
And we are still, I mean, I know we don't want to have a pandemic conversation, but I firmly believe that we have not seen I don't know if you want to say the fallout.
Oh no, we totally haven't.
With our students. I see it because I lived it. I lived it from the minute March 12th hit, and I'm still seeing it. And it's not just our young kids. I mean, I'm seeing it into my college students and beyond, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you that overwhelm piece is really, really powerful. And it's not just young kids. I see it in everything is just too much, too big, too hard, too vague.
Absolutely.
So my job as a parent and student coach, and what we do at Order, it's funny, we never really talked over. It was funny, pre-pandemic, overwhelm was not really a conversation we were having as much. We were talking study skills and, you know, time management and procrastination. And since the pandemic, I've given, I think, 4 webinars on overwhelm and decision-making fatigue and lying and all of those things on how to underwhelm. I always say that's my job. It's to underwhelm a kid. And it's everything. It's not having 2-on-1 conversations. This is such a fascinating one. And I'm only bringing it because this was a conversation we had about 2 weeks ago on our Facebook group. And I'm thinking, so a parent asked this question, and it's like procrastination adjacent. I call upstairs to my son and I say, can you come downstairs? I need to talk to you. Kid doesn't come. She's like, is he procrastinating? And I'm like, it's not procrastination. What you just said, what you think is the most benign thing, right? Can you just come down? I need to talk to you, right? None of us would ever think that there's anything loaded in there. Her kid was so paralyzed. So again, overwhelmed, paralyzed, looking like procrastination. Why? Because this is where his brain, number one, what did I do wrong?
Yep.
That's the first thing all of your kids are thinking, especially in my world. What did I do wrong? They're actually trying, because remember, they live in the now and the not now. So they're not remembering even what they did an hour ago. Did I do something? Did something happen in school? What did I do wrong is number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yep.
What does she want to talk about? How long is it going to be? How many of them are it's too much. There it is.
Absolutely. Yep.
Too many things that brain is now trying to figure out. So in my world, and I want you all to know, and I keep saying this, I don't know why I picked up my phone. I don't talk to my son every day. He's 24, but I text him and he texts me. Even I don't do for a 24-year-old who is neurodiverse, hey, do you have time to talk? Because I don't know if he's thinking he did something wrong, but he might still. So if I was in the position of calling for that student, I would I'll use my son's name. Hey, Eli, can you come downstairs to talk about, maybe it's logistics for the next day. Maybe it's whatever it is. it'll take 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
See what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
I preempted all of that overwhelm.
Absolutely. And I will say, when you asked that question, I immediately went, oh crap. Because that's 100% what it is. And I've actually started to recognize that about myself. And I will say I've said this to managers or to colleagues, would you do me a favor, please? And when you need me for something, can you tell me what it's about? Because my immediate response is that I've done something wrong, and I'm really working to fix that in my brain, but I don't know that I ever will. So if you could just tell me, hey, I have a question about blah, 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 that would really help me not panic.
So, did you see what you just did there? Okay, so since we're sharing and we're all friends,
yeah,
I am that way too. You know, I run a big company, so when somebody calls and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you," I think, sorry.
Yeah, no, like, oh my God, did I screw up?
Right. Did we screw up? Did somebody do something? Did we forget to do something? Like it's bad, and I am working on that too. But what you're doing there is taking down the overwhelm, which then allows your student to do what it is they need to do. So we didn't really talk right brain, left brain, but right brain, left brain is so important when it comes to procrastination, because when your child, so we all know, like, left brain is our linear thinking brain. It's our logical, think of all the L words, right? That's how we remember it. Linear, logical, rational, all of that. Our right brain is our emotional brain. It's the brain. And unfortunately, when the brain gets like in that mode of like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? It grows like a balloon. It just, and I get a lot of buts. There's no buts. Your right brain always wins. There's no buts about it. There's no sidebar here, friends. There's no sidebar. The right brain, I always say it's feelings over facts.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing's going to happen. There's going to be massive procrastination in your home if that right brain is in full throttle. So we always have to be looking to make that right brain very, very small, very calm, right? So, and even when and I know this is like really hard to do, but even if your kid is in like in a state and you want to go like, it's not so bad, or I don't understand, or why can't you you're just adding fuel to that fire. It is now it is like what is it? In a 7-alarm fire. And what we have to do always is we have to talk to the right brain, even if we don't want to, even if we're mad, even if I'm doing something horribly wrong, because there is time for teaching moments, just not at that time. And we have to bring that right brain down by connecting to it. Then we can redirect to the left brain.
That speaks directly to a conversation we had with Renee Sinning yesterday here in the roundtable. She was talking about, like, it went relative to increasing self-esteem, is acknowledge and validate. Like, acknowledge the fact that they're upset, and then validate that they're not alone. Like, there's a reason that they are, and that's fine. And then, like, to your point, come back for the teaching moment later. But if you can't get through that acknowledgement and the validation, and you're invalidating what they're feeling, then it's just going to become this big dumpster fire that maybe didn't need to be, or likely didn't need to be.
Exactly. So that's a big one. I mean, I know I keep saying I always say this, and I write a lot about this in the book, that we think of procrastination as very linear, right? Meaning, if my student understood how much time it took, they would just do it. Or if my kid understood how to study, he would just do it. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Yes, skill is massively important. Trust me, we wouldn't be as busy as we are if we weren't teaching study skills and all these kind of skills. But that whole undercurrent of worry, anxiety, and overwhelm, all of that is still there in the mix too. So even if we understand how to do something and we're still not, there's something else going on as well. And most likely it's in this category.
I think the biggest thing that I've taken away, Leslie, from our talk today is feelings over facts. And
Right?
we had actually we've got somebody listening in, tuning in on LinkedIn who commented, number one, hoodie and earphone syndrome. I love that description. So thank you for that. And then the distinction between overwhelmed versus lazy. Um, this user said, thank you for sharing that.
Tell them thank you. It's funny. Like, I've done a lot of things, and I always say, if I ever decided to do a TED talk, my TED talk would be on the perception of laziness, because I feel like that's something I champion all the time. Is
Absolutely.
like, what is it? What does it really look like? What does lazy really look like, and why is it happening? So thank you.
And I'm thinking too, we're all about connection here, right? That there's always, one of my favorites is challenge your truths. What do you know to be true? And that's where I see a parallel, like, to facts, right? Like, I see that you're not doing what you need to do, or what I asked you to do, or what your teacher asked you to do. But go beyond that. What else is, like, explore beyond that. What else is going on? What else could be underlying the situation?
So do we have a second for something else?
Yeah, let's go.
So I give a study, and there's a reason I'm telling you this. I give a study webinar like once a year. Sometimes I even give it twice a year, because study skills in our community is a very hot topic. And there's always the question of, how do you handle the child that's defiant or does not want to? And that's a whole other conversation. But what I want to tell everyone, and to your point too, is that I call it, you have to play I Spy. There's always something else going on. But in that capacity, one of the fun things I always ask is, so I'll ask, everybody listening, I'll say, tell me what time homework starts in your house. Okay. And people will go 4:00 or after school or after dinner. And I'm like, every single one of you are wrong. Sorry, I'm very but I'm funny about it. I mean, I'm nice. I'm never rude. I'm feisty, but I'm never rude. And I'm like, you're all wrong. And they're all like, you're wrong. And this is like in the chat. I'm like, homework starts the second your child shows up for school. Think about it. Think about what has to line up in your child's day. Now add the neurodiversity piece to it, and make sure that homework actually happens at night. Homework also doesn't live on its own. So think about it. Did they hear? Did they understand? Did they process? Did they learn it? Did they remember it? Do they know what they have to do? So again, there's that perception of laziness. There's that procrastination piece. And that's like, because I know that's what people are coming for. It's not like laundry, and it's all like the homework, the studying, all of that. I get it. Trust me, I get it more than you. Well, no, I think you probably all think I get it. But I always challenge back and say, that's when homework starts. So it is very rare that a student who is not doing something at home, school-wise, and it's very rare that it's not starting or emanating from school. Yes. Do you have the kid that just is absolutely fine and defiant and just wants to be on their social media all day? Of course there is, but that's not the norm.
Right.
90% of the time, it's something is happening at school that is making that happen. And that's why, to your point, we have to go back and play I Spy. It's like a chain, and you have to find where the break in the chain is.
I know. Love it. So good. All right. I'm going to toss it back to you. I know this was in the email that I sent to you. Okay. I always wrap up by asking our guests which of the foundations of connection speaks most to them. And for those who aren't familiar with it, I'll go through a quick verbal of it. It's all the letters in connection. So create a safe place, observe, non-judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity, which we just talked about that, and explore, take your time, innovate, own your own story, and nurture.
Can they be all of them?
Yeah, right.
So I'm actually going to pick one. I know which one I'm going to pick. It's going to be take your time.
Okay.
Because I think also I think a lot of also what happens is we as parents don't wait for the answers, or we sometimes don't give the space to allow our students to talk. We are very like, why? And you can tell that I have a lot of acronyms and a lot of fun things, but I teach something called WAIT, right? to parents, why am I talking?
I love that.
Why am I talking right now? Why am I talking? Sometimes you need to sit in silence. Sometimes you need to give your student the time, particularly if they're neurodiverse. Like their brains can't catch up to our rapid speed of like peppering them with questions. So you need to take your time with getting from your student the information you want and need.
I love that.
So that's,
and what a great way to wrap it up. You know, I love the fact that you've offered us some actionable tips and some things to consider, but man, that's a powerful one. And frankly, again, not only applicable between adults and younger folks. Think about like, you know, what's that?
No, I agree with you. I have adults who go, oh, I have that on my, you know, when I'm in a Zoom call, I have that on my thing going, I'm like, why am I talking? Why am I talking? Don't need to talk.
Is it okay if I borrow that as long as I attribute it to you?
Of course, yes, of course.
Awesome. Of course. Well, Leslie, thank you so much for your time here on our primary broadcast. For anyone who's listening, we're going to make sure that all of Leslie's contact information is in all of our the comments and whatnot in our Facebook group, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Give us a few days to get that caught up, and that'll be there. Leslie, thank you.
You're so welcome.
So appreciate it. And for those of you who are part of our family and parent-oriented membership group at Parent Tween Village, Leslie's going to give us another maybe 10, 12 minutes talking about demystifying executive functioning. I am super excited for that. So Leslie, thank you. For anyone who's not part of Parent Tween Village yet, come on over and join us.
Okay. See you on the inside.
Have a great day, everybody.